If you're thinking about it, we're talking about it here on our program, Moral Side of the News. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me again this week is a distinguished panel, Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church, and Reverend Sally McClain, Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Our first topic: for the first time ever, the U.S. House Speaker was ousted by rank-and-file lawmakers this week. 8 Republicans, frustrated with Speaker Kevin McCarthy for working with Democrats to avert a government shutdown, helped vote him out. So we turn to our panel on Moral Side of the News. Panel, what does this latest power push say to you about the state of affairs in Washington?
More chaos. I mean, it's as you mentioned, John, it's never happened before. It's unprecedented for them to oust a speaker in session. So I thought for sure, all through these many decades of chaos that's occurred in Washington, that this has never happened. So it just punctuates where we are in this nation. And those Republicans that wanted him out, which was a handful, only 8, was willing to throw him to the dogs, if you will, to the Republicans to do their bidding for them, because the majority of the Republicans refused to do it. And basically, he was punished for doing a good deed. You know, I've heard it said, no good deed goes unpunished. So his sin in their eyes was being willing to work with Democrats to prevent a shutdown of the government. So in effect, he was not playing politics, he was actually being a statesman, which is something that we rarely hear these days. He was being a statesman for the sake of the state. So that was his sin, that was his punishment, that was his crime for which he was crucified and ousted. So it's a sad state of affairs that when you attempt to do the right thing for the right reason and to be willing to compromise to make things work. That is really the genius of American politics, is the willingness to compromise. And when we're no longer able to compromise, then the government doesn't work. And so he was willing to do his work on a rare occasion, do the work of a statesman to save the state, and this was the result. Never happened before, and I'm glad he was willing to sacrifice his political career for doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Clay, about his willingness to compromise. And what I read about Speaker McCarthy's background, the former speaker that is that he was a pragmatic politician, and so he would be willing to compromise on some things. That wouldn't be a defense of all of his policies from me around that. Just to say that, though, one of the things I found from my experience around it is that this is an historical moment for us, the first time that we've had the speakership vacated like that. And there's a drama to it. And I find of myself, my own experience, to be fascinated by the drama and the history of it, and learning about it. And at the same time, I'm repelled by the fact that the drama so dominates the business of that event. That is, behind all of this story, there's policy that needs to be discussed in dialogue. There's policy that needs to be made. And the policy around this, which much of it was about spending cuts, needs to be talked about. And that goes way under. We did avert a shutdown for a brief period of time. It's temporary, but it seems to me, much more dialogue about the prudent financial judgments of our United States governments and how they fund themselves, and also how our nation's treasury stays healthy. And I think that needs to be talked about. And all these other kinds of things. So for example, the issue that comes from that, those 8 Republicans who helped vacate the seat of the speakership, I don't hear any plan for the future. Like who's the new person that they want for Speaker of the House? What plans are there for our government in the future? I don't hear anything like that. And I think, well, why even do this if that's the case?
I think it's kind of sad when you've got such a minority that's going to actually hold everybody else hostage, which is essentially what they did. And I was in and out sort of watching what was going on when it was happening and listening to several different people stand up and speak. Massey from Kentucky gave a passionate speech. I thought he was, he was pro-McCarthy, and I was really proud of him.
Oh, that's rare.
That's what I thought. That was, it was a really good argument that he gave. And I think the ones that wanted him there were working to give a good argument. But when you've got this faction that can hold everybody else hostage, and I think McCarthy knew that going in after the 15 votes, and he agreed to that, then that's where we were. So it was just, you're right about the drama, which I forget which one of you said the drama. I think you did. And the drama was intense. And apparently, in the caucus room or wherever they were when they were discussing it, it was actually volatile. I mean, they were almost down to, somebody said it was so tense in the room that they were almost down to fist fighting because they were so passionate that something needs to get done instead of having this small minority with their own agenda saying, we're not going to work for the good of the country, we're going to work for the good of ourselves.
Well, and then it brings it all to the head. Chaos. We're all Bible literate on this panel. In the midst of chaos, God emerged and brought order out of chaos. And the one thing that God opposes is just chaos for chaos' sake. And that appears to be what the Republican faction thrives on, is just chaos. I think that was the name of the organization in one of those 1960s.
Man from Uncle.
Man from Uncle.
Man from
Chaos
Uncle TV
was
show.
the great
Yes,
enemy for which he was fighting against. So, but they tend to be working on behalf of chaos and thriving on chaos. It's not just the drama, it's the trauma that seems to feed on. It's a bloodthirsty, no result, accomplished nothing. The goal, Brother John, is nothing. Yeah. That they want nothing. That's the goal, to do nothing and to throw things in chaos. And then you have the other person, Jordan, out of I think Ohio, and we know what he's about. And the other Scalise, he's as bad as you can get. So at least. McCarthy was the devil's, is lack of a better term, the devil we know rather than the devil we don't know. We know those guys are just despicable. Even I think Scalise, he spoke at a KKK rally in recent years and claimed he didn't know it was that. So we've got some virulent evil that's at work. So the fact that the poor Democrats, I hate to call them poor Democrats, they were caught betwixt and between. They could have set this one out and not voted because the Republicans, the majority of Republicans did want him out because they voted to keep him. But the Democrats was kind of egged on to do the evil bidding of getting him out. Of course, they naturally said, okay, we'll go along with it. We want him out, but not realizing that this is checkers, not chess. And sometimes you have to be strategic about your vote and what the consequence would be 2 or 3 moves down the road.
But there was another issue because I thought perhaps that the Democrats would pull it out thinking that, hey, we can get much worse than McCarthy if we let this ride out. But then there was a trust issue with McCarthy that didn't happen after they made the agreement about keeping and funding the government. Then McCarthy blamed the Democrats. And after that, and listening to Claiborne speak, he said after that happened, we weren't going to save him. We weren't going to pull him out of that. Right, after he reneged. So it became a trust issue. Was he going to do what he said he was going to do, or was he going to change his mind and then cater again to the minority? So
yeah, it's a delicate balance. I remember talking to a colleague of mine, a good friend of mine, Gerald Neal. He has served in Congress and he's on the Senate in Frankfurt. And he was saying one thing you really have to be careful about. He was very adamant about this in private. He said, you have to keep your word, whatever that word is, because once you break your word, they'll never trust you again. So you have to really kind of keep track of the promises you make and the promises you have to keep, because once you break your word, even to your adversaries, you'll never be effective again. So he, having been in the chamber and Congress for many years and the Senate for many years, he realized that can make or break your career. You can cross the line all kind of ways, but you don't have the luxury of breaking your word in those deliberations.
Well, it's the same way with the family. It's the same way with the parent. It's the same way with clergy when you're in a congregation. You have to build trust. And they have to know that you mean what you say. You might be able to edge a little bit, but you can't go all the way over. You know what I'm saying?
You can't go all the way. My grandmother
Can't go all the way
famously
over.
used to say this. She was really the rule of the roost in our family. Not our grandfather, my grandmother. And she would say this. She said, "Baby," she would say this. Yeah, if I say I'm going to spank you, going to whoop you, she would say, "I've got to whoop you, baby, because I cannot afford to let you make a lie out of grandma." Okay? Because if I compromise with you, I got to compromise with all the other grandchildren. And I cannot afford to let you, baby, make a lie out of grandmama. Because her word was who she was. So she explained that to me early on. I didn't understand it then, but now I understand it. But because her word was wrapped up in who she was and her integrity, etc. So some of those individuals who serve in Congress and the like, they can't afford to let somebody make a lie out of them. They just have to even if it means falling on the sword for the sake of the state, you've got to do it.
I'm not too sure how much the American public wants their political leaders, their legislators, to trust one another, though. We've gotten kind of tribalistic, where a person of another party or who thinks differently, they become the enemy. And then there's just not much trust. And so I'm thinking in that atmosphere, not only is there a lot of trust, there's probably not much conversation at all, which builds up trust, and not much relationship. You hear famously, years ago about how members of Congress would socialize together, even those of different parties and things like that, and that they saw each other as human beings. There's something about that, especially in that era when many of them, where they were probably all men, and which that doesn't make any difference for this, but they just by fact were, and probably most of them served in World War II together, and so then there was this trust coming out in that particular era. This is a whole different era now. This is where people grow up very differently in different parts of the nation, and here we're a little bit more tribalistic than when we used to be. So I just wonder about trust there. But trust is necessary. I think, as you brought up, for our Congress leaders to talk to one another, and Congress members to talk to one another, there's got to be that sense of trust where they work together on things.
Well, you think,
I was going to say, one thing I heard was that this time, even though we think that it's unprecedented in our history, is not as bad as it was after the Civil War. We are not trying to deal with people who are so passionate about slavery and keeping the institution of slavery. So there is a way that this can be worked out. There is a way that there can be compromise. It is not, and maybe it's not as bad as it appears, which I thought was maybe a touch of hope in there somewhere. But if you've read any of, I can't remember the name of the author, The Team of Rivals, about Abraham Lincoln.
David McCullough, perhaps?
Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Yes, I think, yeah. And so how Lincoln, if we would go back and read our history, how Lincoln went back and worked with those people, trying to work for the good of the nation, saying that slavery cannot exist. We cannot exist this way with this kind of chaos and be a world power.
Right. I think McCullough was one that told me that term about the brilliance of chaos, of compromise. And I think I don't know a lot about the mechanics of politics, but I know there have been some very famous speakers over the years. Tip O'Neill in recent generations was one of the most celebrated speakers. Even Newt Gingrich, to some great degree, was very effective and to a great degree respected. He even has voice even to this day as a speaker. And they had to deal with both sides of the aisle, as they say. So they realized that to get anything done, you've got to get somebody on the other side to work with you. And so they were speakers, but they also were statesmen to a great degree. And I think that's something that McCarthy was attempting to do. Of course, he suffered the consequence of attempting that.
But also knowing where the votes are. I think that
You
was
gotta
one
be
of
able
the
to count.
strength of Pelosi
Right.
and Lyndon Johnson
count the
was
votes.
knowing where the
You gotta be
votes
able to
were.
count.
And you have to be able
You gotta
to
count.
count them and say, I can't win on this.
Right.
Well, we'll see where this goes. A footnote from trivia. It was Man from U.N.C.L.E. The organization was Chaos. It was a Cold War series starring Robert Vaughn and David McCallum,
All
who
right.
just died last week.
Oh, right, he did. Right.
So there you go. We just
Right.
put that in your trivial
Right,
file.
well,
You can
we'll
use
throw
that
it
when you
out
go
there.
out the next trivia show you go to.
Indeed.
We're off
Okay.
and running on Moral Side of the News. Thank you for watching and listening. We have a second topic now. Studies show Louisville is short more than 58,000 units of affordable housing. Mayor Craig Greenberg says he has a plan to add 15,000 units in his first term in office. Quoting the mayor now, he says, we're talking about housing of every type, single-family housing, apartments, duplexes, every type of housing, every zip code, every metro council district, every neighborhood. Panel, turning to you, let's hear your thoughts about the mayor's plan for affordable housing.
Well, I mean, I applaud him. I've worked with housing organizations. I've worked with a church organization building affordable housing over 20 plus years ago. There has been an affordable housing shortage for some time now. This is, it won't eliminate the shortage, but it will put a dent in the housing shortage. There's no place like home, as famously, as Dorothy Gale famously said, to make more houses. I went to Homerama just last week. It's Homerama season. I have just rebuilt my house. So I always like to go in to see what's going on. And there's a shortage of Homerama houses this year, believe it or not. They're scattered site, they're outlawed in one site. You don't get as much bang for your buck. I mean, it's almost to the point now where someone wanted to move into a house. I don't know how the average person could even buy a house these days without some assistance in some way, because the housing price have just gone skyrocket. They have one, the most expensive house this year, Sally's out in Shelby County. I think it's $4 million, which I intend to go see this week.
Just to see what's out
Just
there?
to see what a $4 million house looks like, you know. So, but I applaud the mayor for realizing that this is something that the government can weigh in on. You can make a difference. You may not solve the whole problem, but you can make a difference for the good. So I applaud him on the effort to put money in this endeavor. And it's not spending money, you're investing money. People forget this has a return on investment. Tax dollars come back in, it's money for school board, all is wrapped in this. So it does, water cast on bread cast on the water does return and does feed and replenish the overall economy. So I applaud him for this effort.
I think it's a great effort, but I see a pitfall. How's this going to work in every neighborhood throughout the county? You know as well as I know, there are going to be people who don't want that type of housing in their neighborhood.
Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. And they're going to fight it tooth and toenail. So
We'll see.
you think not? You think it's going to work?
We'll see.
If it takes care of the homeless population, which
I don't know
everybody...
about the homeless population. You have to qualify. Homeless likely won't be candidates for these funds. That's a whole different fund.
Oh, it's not going to be possible
No.
for the whole
Well,
homeless...
you got to make mortgages. You got to make payments. So I mean, this is not to address the homeless situation. This is to address the housing shortage within Metro Louisville.
For low-income people.
Or not,
Affordability.
It's more affordable.
With a
And
sport
so
partner,
all housing is affordable to somebody. You know, even that $4 million house is affordable to somebody, not maybe to you and I, but it's affordable to somebody. You know, so,
Can't imagine it's up for me. Okay.
Right. So, but it's not designed to meet the challenge created by the homeless situation in Louisville. This is not that program, but it does address the housing shortage that existed in Louisville. When they start tearing down a lot of these public facilities, and they went to scattered site housing, there's been an extreme shortage for decades now. So this is an attempt to kind of replenish that and try to tip the scales back in the right direction.
Yeah, but if you live in that $4 million house, you don't want a house that's worth $250,000
Well,
in
you're
your
not going to
neighborhood.
have it. Believe me, they won't be that close.
I don't think so either.
It's
but
possible, but you know, I don't know how it's going to work.
I like the idea that at the very beginning of this idea that the mayor put forth a vision, that this is what he wants to see. He wants to see 15,000 homes being built. It doesn't meet the need all the way, because we talked about 58,000 homes that are needed, but it's a start, and it's a vision. And then I think with that vision that there's going to be a lot of conversation about that there are, along this way of implementing this, there are obstacles that have to be overcome. And then, but you can't only look at the obstacles, but you also have to look at the benefits, like what Clay talked about, the whole benefit of 15,000 homeowners in our community.
There's a
is
return,
just-
an
there's a
ROI,
big
return on
that.
investment.
Yes, yeah, there's a big return on that, and to have more homeowners is great. And
And taxpayers.
yeah, exactly. Yep. So I think that to put that vision out there and have people talk about it and find ways to implement in some way, I think that's great.
Well, when you're bringing in new industry too, I'm thinking in Shelby County, there's a lot moving into Shelby County.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we have the homes available for people to move into at this point.
And Shelby County is virtually a suburb of Louisville now. I mean, it's...
Oh, stop, Clay.
No, you're there
Sally
in
doesn't want
20
to hear
minutes.
that, I don't think.
I don't want to hear that. No, I
But
don't.
the reality, you're there in 20 minutes. You're 20 minutes from here, I can be in Shelby County. From this spot, I can be in Shelby in 20 minutes.
Well, you drive a lot faster than I do.
Well, 25 tops.
Because 25 tops,
From here to there.
I did it today in 45, but okay.
The race is on.
The races, we'll get out of one. This is the street racing question that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to actually a different topic because we're running on time and perfectly on time. So what happens when electric car batteries die? Soon they will be recycled in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. A battery recycling facility where those batteries will be shredded is under construction. Panel sounds like Kentucky will be host to a whole new industry being created by electric cars. How do you feel about this?
I think it's amazing. I mean, we're moving in a different direction. You know, I went to Kentucky State University. We had a band that started at Kentucky State called Midnight Star, okay? And they've had, with the Calloway boys were the ones that helped create that music.
Is this a plug? I'm not sure what's
but
happening
I want
here.
to say, they wrote a song called Electricity. That's the point I'm going. You can Google that too.
I
Had a
will.
song called Electricity by Midnight Star. I've been trying to pitch that to the governor to help him use that as his campaign theme, electricity, because that's the era we're in. We got an electric car battery plant in coming up in Radcliffe.
Yeah, Glendale.
I think one in Bowling Green, and now in Hoptown. This is the era of electricity, and it's electric in the air. We're moving away from fossil fuels to electricity that's generated in a way. It's the wave of the future. It's the era of the Jetsons. It's exciting to see the innovations that are coming up in Kentucky, of all places, and in Hopkinsville as well. I applaud the effort. It won't be nearly as big as the ones in Bowling Green and Radcliffe, but still it's a step in the right direction. You're not burning coal. You're not using fossil fuel. You're doing something that is recycling, and it tends to be more conducive to the environment and without harm to the green footprint. I think that's the term they use.
We need some of your lyrics, Clay.
Well, we have some
you-
lyrics. Look, Google it, electricity. I think it'd be perfect.
You're not going to sing just hum just a little bit of it for us, so we
but
can.
I think I put it out there so people can Google
What,
it.
what do you two think of this?
And I think it's a great idea. Just a real simple thing. I think it's a great idea to recycle a waste product like that. And they could build, I mean, if you didn't recycle it, I suppose they would just build up, and then you've got to put it in landfill or something like that. I think the whole sense of recycling is a really good thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a good thing. And I mean, there are people who are very opposed to the electric cars and all the electric that's going on, Clay, because they're saying, well, we're not going to be able to afford it. It's not going to be possible for us to afford an electric vehicle. And what's your answer to that?
Well, I don't know, but we've found a way to make progress and make it work. I mean, I bump into the Amish all the time at Menards. They don't seem to be phased back one way or another. You know, they wear the straw hats and they keep on and
They still
their
have
buggies.
their means of getting around.
All that, they made them make it. So they're not affected by this whole debate. So we'll make adjustments, but you cannot hold back the inevitable effects of progress. We're in the era moving forward, and this apparently here, because it is the industry of the times. And I went to a friend of mine's house last week. He lives in Fisherville. He had an old sign of Sunoco. The old Sunoco gas station sign was a big dinosaur.
Yep.
On it, and I forgot that, which is where oil comes from. And then he was telling me the details about this Sunoco commercial with the tail of the dinosaur going in the ground, and it kind of shows how it all came about. But anyway, I forgot that this, that dinosaur, that prehistoric animal had to die so that oil can be produced. But that era is coming to an end.
Speaking of, can I finish with our last story?
Yes.
The last full-service gas station in Louisville
Right,
is
good.
closing. When the gas tanks run dry, Pruitt's at the intersection of Frankfurt Avenue and Lexington Road will turn off the ignition for good. Rocky Pruitt, the owner, is retiring. Panel, does this take you back? So we've gone from electric cars, now we're talking about old gas stations. Does this take you back to the old days? About 3 minutes left.
Mr. Nostalgic, have you ever been to the filling station at the intersection
I don't think so.
of Frankfurt Avenue and
Shelbyville.
Road, right there, intersection right there where it splits off? They would come out and wash and pump your gas, and it also seems like a throwback, but it was. And but I've been there a time or two. But things have changed so much since then. The only reason you really go there now is just for the nostalgia value.
A full-service
yeah.
gas station is a thing of the past. Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, the only thing missing was the S&H green stamps.
Oh, wow. Yes.
That's the only thing missing. But it was such a throwback. If you go there just for the experience of the old days, and the clock has been ticking on that service for years now, and it finally came to an end.
I think what else is missing, getting a little bit maybe serious in this, is the fact of the thing of human beings sort of making contact with other human beings. So now you get gas and you basically just pump it yourself, And there's this whole thing about when we connect with one another, we build up social capital, to use that particular phrase, and that's important for community. And so we want to find ways to do that, ways where there's more human connection, I think, with each other. And some of them economically may not work in the very small things like a gas station, but to find ways to do that, I think is important.
I think we need to just go ahead. I'm a Mayberryologist. I think you have to just resort to Gomer and his performances to go back and revisit that, because that's what he did. He worked at the gas station in Mayberry. He'd pump the gas and he'd do all that for us.
Mr. Pruitt says, who's the man retiring, says he's in the relationship business, John, to back up your thought.
Yeah.
It is.
And it seems to me that's going away.
It is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's just,
You want it to change, maybe not go away. So that particular business is going away, but you want to find change to happen in society where that kind of human interaction happens in other ways.
Yeah.
It's good for us.
It is.
It's good for community.
good business too. I mean, if you find a way to make it work for you and be profitable, it's good.
Well, we'll see. Maybe another convenience store will pop up on that corner, and it'll be where you can get your groceries and your gas. We'll find out. Thanks to our panel on this edition of Moral Side of the News, Clay Calloway, John Stoltz, and Sally McClain. You can catch this program anytime on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for Moral Side of the News. Thanks for watching and listening, Moral Side of the News. We'll be back with an all-new conversation next week. So long.